Morning Sam, good morning Mark, good morning Dave, how are you doing? Rob? How are you doing, buddy? Nice to see you from Mauritius. Good morning everybody, we'll just wait for some people to join the room and then we'll discuss our rebreather we're going to cover today, which is the AP rebreathers. Good morning Shani from South Africa. Ludo, also from Mauritius. Good morning Mark, how you doing? Nice to see everybody joining us this morning, or the afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. We've got Will answering the messages, so if you guys got messages that you want to put, just pop those in the comments. Either I'll answer them online through the video, or Will will answer them in the comments. You got your new phone yet, Rob? It's nice to see you, Max. How you doing, buddy? Okay, so we've got 16, 18 at the minute. Just give it another moment for people to join in. Okay, a couple more coming. Just give it until 5 past and then we'll get started. Johan, Rick, hi, nice to see you guys. Give it another 1 minute or so, just let a few people catch up. Chimek, how you doing, buddy? Nice to see you. Greg in the room as well. People catching up. Okay. Hopefully today I've worked out the problem with the flip of the screen. So you guys can tell me, is this correct orientation for you now? Is that the right way around? Can you see that? Morning, Mr. Turner.
What can I do for you?
Greg gets to watch live. You've been so busy during the lockdown, mate. What's she had you doing? Have you had all those jobs you've been meaning to do for the last 6 months? It's correct. Okay, good. We're happy that it's the right way around. Okay, so it's 5 past. We'll get started. Today, a lot like the other days, we're going to take a look at a rebreather. Today's rebreather, we're going to look at the AP rebreathers. Now, we're going to compare those with the SF2 and the JJ. So if you guys want to ask questions to compare them, that's fine. If you've got any general questions as well, just please put those in the comments there, and we'll get to them as they come up. We've also got Will type in and add in comments as well. So between me and Will, we should be able to answer most of your questions. So we'll start with the AP. The AP rebreather is probably the oldest rebreather on the market. It's been around for around about 23 years. 1997 was the first AP Buddy Inspiration at the time. They've evolved quite a lot since then, and we'll go through some of the features. They're one of the most modular rebreathers, so there's the most rebreathers where you can add stuff to it. Generally when you buy something like a JJ or an SF2, it comes in one setup. You can maybe add an inline shutoff here or there, but generally it's pretty standard. Whereas the AP, you can buy it in a base format and then keep upgrading, adding things like CO2 sensors, open circuit bailout valves, ADV, all that kind of stuff. So it's like buying a car, buy it at a low spec, and then you can add to the specification as you move up. So there's 3 types of Inspiration available on the market now. Okay, they're all called Inspiration, and there's the Inspiration Evo, which is EVO, and that's 2-litre cylinders and a 2-hour scrubber. Okay, it's 24.5 kilos ready to dive. The EVP, which is the one in the middle, the EVP is a 2-litre cylinder again, so it's the same as the Evo, but now it's got the 3-hour duration scrubber, so it's got a slightly bigger scrubber bucket in it. Means the case is slightly taller. And then at the top end you have the XPD, and the XPD is the Inspiration which has got the bigger cylinders, so it's got 3-litre cylinders and it's also got the 3L scrubber. So the one you can see in front of you, this is my Inspiration EVP, sorry, yeah, it says on the side. This is Evolution Plus, and this one, if you look at the size of this one is the size case of the XPD. Actually, this is the older case. All the new cases are this smooth style. The older cases have this lump and a weight pocket at the top. In my personal opinion, when I'm diving with the bigger machines, if I'm going to use the case, I prefer it with the bigger, older case with the big top. This rebreather actually belongs to somebody on the Facebook Live at the moment, Gerald over in Mauritius. He's purchased this rebreather, we've serviced it, and then we're going to bring it along to Mauritius when the lockdown opens and training with it. We're going to go through and strip this rebreather down and build this one up, because my one doesn't have all the fancy toys. It doesn't have the CO2 sensor, it doesn't have the temp stick, it doesn't have all those bits and pieces. So with my rig machine being, let's say, a base model, it's nice for you guys to see the big boy with all the toys on it. So we're going to use Gerald's rebreather, and he's already given me his permission to do that. So with that in mind, put this one to one side. Now we can talk about the Inspiration. So some of the features, Inspiration's got a dual controller in it, which means there's two electronics boards monitoring the system, monitoring the amount of oxygen inside the loop. Those two controllers both have independent batteries. So you've got two batteries, and both controllers can see both batteries. You only get one actual physical handset display, and the second display is built up in a hood. The hood's actually fibre optic, which is a kind of a unique feature in the for the Inspiration. It comes with things like a CO2 sensor as an optional extra, a scrubber monitor as an optional extra, and ADV as an optional extra, which I'll go through as we build the rebreather and show you what they all are. But it's a plug and play machine. AP have been going for around 50 years, and they were the first on the market, which means that this rebreather is probably the most sold rebreather on the market. There'll be more Inspirations around in the world than any other. They've kept the design relatively similar. So what that means is there's lots of parts available. Parts that fitted a machine from 10 years ago will probably fit a machine from today. And so if you're traveling with your rebreather and you want to find spares or accessories, this is the machine that's going to be the most easy to find parts for sure. Okay, now you can see that this rebreather differs from the rebreathers we've looked at so far in that everything is contained inside a box. So we have a hard plastic case where all of the components are stored. All right. Around the front, we have a wing. This is the AP wing. It's got some D-rings built on the side to allow you to clip things to, and it's a square donut style wing. This one in particular has a back mounted counterlung, so a little bit like the JJ, these fit over your shoulders, or an over shoulder counterlung, and they're going to hold the gas while you're breathing. So we have these, and this time they're available in yellow, available in grey as well, so grey or yellow back mounted counterlungs. We also, with the AP, can buy a front mounted counterlung, which is actually like chest mounted. It comes right over the front here and down. The AP was only originally available with the front mounted lungs, so you'll see that their older machines generally have the front mounted lungs, and most people that buy a machine now will usually buy a back mounted lung just to keep the front clear. Okay. Difference between back and front mounted counterlungs a little bit in the breathing effort. If you imagine that the counterlung is behind your body, so you're lying flat in the water, and the counterlung is then shallower than you are. Okay, that means that the counterlung is at less pressure than you. So that means it's a little bit easier to exhale, but a little bit tougher to inhale. If the counterlung is underneath your body, so kind of chest mounted, right underneath you, then that would mean that the counterlung is at slightly higher pressure than you, so it's being pushed, so it's a little bit easier to inhale, but a little bit harder to exhale. And it's about balancing that breathing effort. With all the other parts of the machine that make up the total work of breathing, it's about making sure that something we call static lung load, which is the amount of pressure that you're going to need to breathe against the machine, is as low as possible. Okay. Again, trim and stuff affect it, but if we go for a nice, let's say, over the shoulder counterlung, which is kind of back mounted, you're going to end up with a bubble of air around your shoulder, which if you're lying in a front mounted, in a trim position, is going to mean the counterlungs are roughly level with your lung, and that means it's going to be nice and easier to breathe from. So whether you go for the front mounted or the back mounted, they're both as tested, and they're both CE rated, so not really a difference. But some people might have noticed the fact that the front mounted counterlung means their front isn't so clear for things like clipping on multiple stages. Okay, can you move the AP wing? and fit a different make? Yes, you can. If you look at the one that I've got here, so I've got a halcyon wing on my rebreather, but it does invalidate the C when you start fiddling with your rebreather too much. So be careful when you do change things, that you change things that are only in line with the manufacturer's recommendations. So if you want to keep it completely stock as it comes from the factory, it'll come with the AP wing, back mounted counter on this set, and also the AP harness. The AP harness has got the weight pockets and everything built in, and it is a little bit cumbersome. As you can see, if you compare the front of this rebreather, and it's not fully built yet, to something like the JJ or the SF2, you'll notice that the front is much more busy. There's a little bit more going on, especially with the length of the hoses. On this rebreather, they've not been cut down yet, because we haven't had a chance to take it to its owner. But you see, there's quite a bit going off. It's also got this padded section here in the back. Okay, this padded section along with this harness do add a little bit of buoyancy, so you're going to need a little bit more weight than you would with another rebreather to offset all of that. If you go for a steel backplate and you go for a non-AP wing, you'll probably reduce the amount of weight you need, but you might impact on the breathing design of the counterlungs, especially with the shape of the backplate. So always be really careful not to change anything or too much from the manufacturer's specification. Right. One of the things I'll say that I like about the AP the most is the oxygen control. So it's rated that it maintains oxygen control 0.05 plus minus from set point, okay? And it's really, really smooth to dive. One of the things I found when I moved to other rebreathers, it was that they didn't feel quite as smooth as the AP until you get used to diving them. After a couple of dives, it doesn't really matter, but you notice that the AP is kind of doing its thing in the background and you don't really notice it. So one of the nice features, in my personal opinion, is the way that this machine decides how much oxygen to add, then adds that oxygen without really affecting your buoyancy control. So it's quite a smooth rebreather to dive. Okay, so open the back and I'll show you guys what we've got inside. So if we open the lid of the case, you can see inside we have an oxygen first stage. The oxygen first stage will be, this one's a DIN fitting, but you can get the M26 as well. It has on it an overpressurization valve, the same thing as anything else. If we were to fail the system, we would need overpressure to come out this overpressure valve. We have one fitting that goes up and comes to this side of a distribution manifold. This distribution manifold isn't fully across. There's a break in the middle. So they've got the oxygen side of the manifold, and then you've got the diluent side of the manifold. Coming from this manifold, we have one feed here, and this feed goes to our solenoid. Okay, this is the top of the head of the solenoid fitting. The other feed here goes this way and comes down. Just disconnect it for a moment for you. To our manual addition button. So we have one feed, gas in to the manual addition, and then we press the manual addition valve and oxygen will go down and into the back of the exhale counterlung. Okay. On the diluent side, very similar. With diluent regulator, DIN, overpressure valve, we have one feed, of course, to our SPG. The other feed comes up and goes again to a distribution manifold. This distribution manifold has 3 ports. One goes here to the ADV, and this is our automatic diluent valve. I'll show you in a minute. The other one heads over to our diluent manual addition. The diluent manual addition, when you add the diluent, goes into the inhale counterlung. And then the last feed here is the one that drives our wing. Okay, so the wing on board is also driven from the diluent. So we have our oxygen side on the right and our diluent side on the left, just like all of the rebreathers. Difference being, it's contained here in the case. These first stages are proprietary. They're made by AP. They're a very, very easy, very, very simple first stage. They do have a swivel turret on it, a little bit like the Apex DST, and then an adjustment screw right at the end here, so you can adjust the in-stage pressure to make sure that it's within range. So really, really nice. They just fit inside the box. We'll come to the front. I'll show you some of the front features of the machine. You'll notice on this rebreather, actually, while I've got you, is here on the base. This one has been fitted with a metal frame. The machine is quite prone to this box cracking at the bottom. You can see there's a small crack in the box already. The box itself is made out of ABS plastic. And if it was to get hot and cold a lot, and especially if you were to drop it with a lot of weight in it, it would damage and crack this foot, and that means the machine falls over. So this one's been fitted with a stainless steel base plate. It's also got some sections on here to allow you to clip some stages to, but it means that the machine's a little bit more stable and a little bit more strong on the bottom of the case. So we'll shut the case up, just so you can see. 2 rubber latches that just pop into place. Around the front foot. Okay, so the front of the rebreather, as we said, we have our oxygen feed. The oxygen feed comes from the first stage, connects into one side of our manual addition valve, and when we're to press this button, again, just like the JJ, the harder you press the button, the more gas you're going to get. It's a valve that's on a slide, and as you press it, more gas will come and it'll go down this tube, this hose here, and it will enter the counter lung here at the back fitting. So the back fitting also can be removed. You'll notice they're all knurled fittings. Lots of the fittings on the AP are all knurled, so you can just take them off with your fingers, and you don't need any tools to do that. Helps with the cleaning process and the strip down process. On the diluent side, we have exactly the same thing. We have a feed that comes down here, and the diluent comes back up over the top, and the diluent comes into the inhale side of the counter lung. It's important which side of the counter lung the feed goes into. Obviously, you don't want oxygen coming directly to the diver without being analysed. So we don't want the oxygen coming in on the inhale side. We want the oxygen coming in on the exhale side, and that means it will got time to go down, pass through the scrubber, mix, be analysed by the cells, and then breathed in. But if the loop was to become hypoxic or hyperoxic, we want to be able to add a gas that we can definitely breathe, and that's likely to be our diluent in almost all situations, in which case you press your diluent manual addition valve, and diluent will be added to the inhale gas. So whatever's in the scrubber, even if it's coming towards you, that gas, you'll be adding diluent to it, so you'll be making it breathable. And that's why we have the inhale and exhale side manual addition feeds. The next one you can see is we've got this feed here, and this one goes to an inline shut-off. This is called the flow stop on the ADV, and the flow stop basically stops the flow of gas. So we have gas flowing in that position, and in that position the gas flow is stopped. That's because here, on the built into the T-piece on this side, we have something called an ADV. I think we already spoke about it, but for those who don't know, it's automatic diluent valve. The automatic diluent valve is designed that when you descend, the loop volume is going to get compressed, and we need to bring that loop volume back to a volume that we can breathe normally. To do that, as the loop compresses, the little diaphragm that's on the end here will contract in, and it will push a lever inside. Much like the second stage of a regulator, the lever will tilt, that will allow gas to flow. When the loop's back up to its normal volume again, that diaphragm will relax back to its normal position, and it won't be pressing the lever and gas will stop flowing. But if it was to free flow, you would be getting diluent constantly into the loop. Number one, that probably empty your diluent. Number two, it would change the amount of oxygen inside the rebreather, which means it will probably add oxygen and you'd start to lose your oxygen supply as well. So in the event of an emergency, if you need to turn this off, you just reach up and you put it into the off position. Okay, so that's our flow stop. The ADV and the flow stop are all optional extras, so they don't come with a base rebreather. You need to add those to it. Come down the harness system. Just get some stuff out of the way. We come down the harness system. You'll notice there's a chest strap to hold the counter lungs from moving over the shoulders. We've got pitch release, and we have pull adjustment. So a little bit more than some of the other rebreathers built in, and also the weight pocket system. The weight pocket system is Velcro, and then internally there's a clip, and inside there's a pocket where you can fit your weight. The bulk of this is quite significant. I'm not a huge fan personally of the pockets and the harness. I think they have a bit of buoyancy and they're a little bit bulky, so for me I would take these off. The pockets come off quite easily. They're just attached here with some plastic threaded screws. You just take those off and the pockets come off. It can leave you with the harness all in one place. Remember again, really important, we spoke about the other day, the position of the rebreather on your back. If the rebreather is not positioned correctly, you'll affect the work of breathing of the machine, okay? And that's not ideal, because the harder it is to breathe, the more chance you have of running into issues with CO2, with the breathing effect of the rebreather. So trying to get it in the right place is important. If you change your undersuit and you get bigger, that means the machine's going to change position. So you might again want to adjust that up. So having adjusters isn't the end of the world, you know, but with this one it's a little bit too bulky. So I'd go for some kind of system a little bit more like I've got on the other rebreathers. Okay. As we go down, you'll notice built in to the base we have the crotch strap. So again, like all kind of back mounted wing systems, when you've got nothing underneath your arms and if you inflate it, it's going to lift up a little bit on the surface. We also have the added buoyancy characteristics of the counterbalance. So the wing, just a normal inflator. This one's been fitted with an aftermarket Scuba Pro inflator actually. The one that comes with it is quite often the Auto Air, which is basically a regulator built in to the low pressure inflator that you can put in your mouth and you can breathe from. That's been removed. The AP one's quite big and quite bulky, so I can see why the previous owner of this one removed it and replaced it with a Scuba Pro one. But as you can see, that's quite lengthy. The nice thing about most of the AP fittings is all of the hoses can be cut down and shortened, and we can make it more tailored towards the diver. The fittings are quite nice. What you do is you remove the two fittings, they're in two parts. You cut the hose to length, you then fit the outer fitting, which screws itself onto the outside of the hose, and then you force in a conical inner fitting that screws together. And that means the hose is still as pressure rated as it was before, but shorter. So it means you can customise the length of the hose on this rebreather to suit the size of the diver. The wing itself has got a pull dump in it, so if you pull the wing, then it's going to dump here from the shoulder. It has a dump here at the bottom right. Interesting thing about the wing on the AP is that the dump is on the back of the wing. Same thing over here. We have another one that's normally blanked off. So we've got a dump, one over this side, and that's blanked off. That can be used because you can buy a small 1.5 litre cylinder that's attached to the wing, and in the event of emergency you would turn that and it would automatically inflate the wing. So if you're out of gas on the rebreather, you could inflate that and it would give you emergency buoyancy. I'm not a massive fan of it myself. I think if it was to go off in an emergency at depth, you'd be in really big trouble. And again, it's just sitting there, a cylinder that you don't get tested very often, doesn't get used very often. So in the event of an emergency, what's the chances of it actually being able to work or be full? So not a big fan of it myself, but it is available as an extra. Right, so just like all rebreathers, first thing we start with is our checklist. We're going to run through the checklist and do the build up with you. I'll explain some parts as we go. So first thing is name. Date today is the 9th, and then the unit serial number, which is 1, 2. Okay, good. And we'll keep a track of our check sheet so that we've always collect them. We can see if our cells are changing over time, if our batteries are changing over time, and we can also have a good record in case something goes wrong. Right. So the first job is to fill the scrubber with softener line. Take the unit out of the way for a moment. The first job is to fill the scrubber. So this is the scrubber for the AP. This is the 3-hour scrubber, so it's the slightly larger scrubber. The 2-hour scrubber is about that big, so kind of, let's say, 2/3 of what we've got. It's got a locking nut on the end that we're going to remove. A sprung base plate section, much like the one on the JJ. This time it's made out of a formed plastic, whereas the JJ ones are made out of a machined Delrin. That's going to go on that side. Inside, did everybody get that? Sorry, somebody phoned me, so my iPad went into a lock mode. Okay, we've got 2 scrims, one in the base, one in the top. I'll pull those out for you. So a scrim in the base and a scrim in the top. Reasoning being, obviously quite big holes in the scrubber. If we don't block those, the scrubber material will fall through. It also captures the dust that we're going to have inside the rebreather. So as the softener line gels together, cracks and breaks, there's also small amounts of dust particles in it, and you don't want to be breathing those in, so the scrim will collect the dust. This one is built in with a little cable here. This cable is for our scrubber monitor. Okay, some people call it a temp stick, some people call it TPM. But it's basically a temperature monitor. what you have up this central tube here is a bunch of thermistors spaced out evenly. Why have I put that there? Just put it there so I don't lose it. So we have a bunch of thermistors running up the central probe here. Those thermistors will detect temperature change, and as they detect the temperature, we can tell where the reaction face of the scrubber is. So if the scrubber is, let's say, partially used, the reaction face, which is where the scrubber will be at its warmest, will be up here, and that thermistor will be able to tell you where it is. If we get all the way to the top and we see that the final thermistor is now getting warm, it means that the reaction face, the reaction is always happens actually this way up, but it means that the reaction has come all the way up to the top of the scrubber, and we've got a chance that the scrubber material is depleted. They're not, in my opinion, enormously accurate. They only tell you where the reaction's happening, but they're quite a good thing that if, let's say, the last thermistor does warm up, you do know that actually you've got to a point where there's CO2 reaching the top part of the scrubber, which will be this way up. You've got this little cable here to fill the scrubber. I'm not going to show you how to do that, but one of the things is important to know is you don't want to damage this cable if you can help it. So we use something like some tape, just pop it on the side, and then we'll fill it on top of the bit of tape. Okay. Be careful, it's a Fisher plug. Once greasing from time to time, you get some Fisher oil in there to stop it going all manky and getting verdigris and rust. Put the plugs on whenever you can. Try to keep this cable in as good condition as you can. So I'm not going to go through exactly how to fill it. That's for the course. Put those two in there like that, out of the way. And then we would fit our base plate, and we'd fit with our nut on the top. Okay, so once that's filled completely, this is our scrubber bucket. So the scrubber bucket is designed to hold the scrubber in place. When we exhale, the gas will flow down this tube here, through to the base of the scrubber, up through the scrubber, into the mixing chamber at the top, through the cells, back to the diver. So this is our scrubber bucket. It's got a marking on here where we can write that we've just changed the scrubber. So we can put date filled, today, 9th, we put the time we filled it, time remaining is 3 hours because it's completely new scrubber. When I'm happy, I'll lift the scrubber using the handle here at the top. Again, not lifting with the cable, make sure the cable's nice and free. I'm going to place that down inside the housing there. Okay. So once it's in, I make sure that it's in good condition, there's no damage. Tick it off that. Next thing is to verify the scrubber O-ring is clean and undamaged. Lubricate with oxygen compatible grease and then place it on top of the scrubber canister. So here is the top scrubber O-ring, and that's going to fit on the top. I also then have a spacer. The O-ring and the spacer work together to make sure that as any change is made in the scrubber tension, and it moves up and down a little bit, that the O-ring follows the scrubber and the O-ring doesn't jump out of place. So we've got a spacer and we've got the O-ring. So like all O-rings, I'm going to make sure it's clean. Okay. Put a little bit O2 compatible grease just on there like that. Make sure it's nice and clean. Now this O-ring here is quite critical to the operation of the rebreather. Without it in place, CO2 can bypass the scrubber and come back to the diver. Same thing with this. So you always want to make sure that you put these in. If you just put these to one side, leave them on the floor, then they can get lost. Like you saw earlier, we have them stored on the side of the rebreather here. That means the head won't actually fit because these are going to be in your way. It means you're not going to lose them. But whatever you do, just make sure you don't lose them. A lot of people like to put them directly back in. When they remove them, pop them on the side and then pop them straight back in. So we're going to put in first our O-ring and make sure that I seat it nicely down on top of the scrubber. Now I'm going to place the spacer ring on top. There's no orientation to the spacer ring, So I'm going to pop the spacer ring again, making sure I don't chuck the cable. When it's on the top, I'm going to push down slightly and just check that everything moves with the spring. Okay, now that means that I can see the O-ring is moving up and down with the scrubber, and I can see the spacer ring isn't jammed. If this was all jammed and twisted, then again I might have caused an issue where the CO2 might bypass the scrubber and come around the outsides. So I'll just make sure that those are always in place. Okay. The next step is to turn on the handset, verify the cells and batteries pass the power test, and replace if necessary. Turn the handset off once the batteries are okay. So this is our electronics component, and this is the head of the rebreather. Again, like all the other rebreathers, probably the most expensive bit. Here we have 3 different feeds. We have one, and this is our head-up display. Our head-up display on here, we have controller 1, which is closest to the cable, and controller 2, which is furthest away from the cable. We have a green light at the top and a red light at the bottom. And those lights are there to indicate what the rebreather is doing. Okay? They don't indicate direct PO2 like they do on the JJ, but they give you an indication of what the PO2 is and any errors inside the rebreather. So that's that one. This is our buzzer. So it's a regulator hose with a cable inside that connects to a speaker. It's an audible alarm. So in the event of an emergency, something goes out of standard, PO2 too high, CO2 too high, PO2 too low, oxygen exposure, whatever it is, then you're going to get an alarm from this buzzer. One of the things about the EP that a lot of people kind of make fun of is the fact that it makes a noise all the time. So it practically, you know, we test this buzzer when it turns on, and if there's anything wrong, it'll always beep. But you've got to look at it in a good way. If it's beeping, then it's warning you. Okay, so there's probably something wrong. The next part is the handset. This one is fitted with the Vision electronics, the Vision 2020 electronics, which is the newer handset, which is a full colour display. My one over here, this one's fitted with the older mono electronics, so it's just a green screen with a LCD display. So you can see the difference in size. In operation, they're almost exactly the same. They both work pretty much the same, and their button combinations are the same. Okay. I'll come a little bit closer so you guys can see the electronics in more detail. So we have our fitting for our hood, our handset, and we have our buzzer. We also have a fitting on here for our solenoid, and inside there you'll see, let me see if I can get that to you. You'll see, there's a small grid of mesh in there, and that's designed to stop any contaminants entering the scrubber and entering the solenoid, blocking the solenoid. On the bottom, we have a locking ring. I'm going to remove the locking ring. It says. Just remove the locking ring from the bottom. And then we have this mixing chamber that we're just going to remove. Try and be careful, we've got a lot of sensitive parts and wires in there. Do it nice and steadily, and I'll remove that. That's our CO2 sensor, which I'm going to remove. Show you in a moment. Okay. And so this is inside of the head of the EP. You can see we have 1, 2, 3 oxygen cells there. Okay, those sensors are a coaxial plug, and they're plugged in with a little cover in there to stop any moisture entering the base of the cell. You've got here an access port, which we can undo. And the access port here allows us to charge the battery, because this rebreather is fitted with the battery system that's rechargeable. So there are different types of batteries depending on the year of inspiration you buy. There are some that take a camera battery, some that take a small round battery, and so you change those batteries. There'll be 2 sets. There'll be a battery set 1 and a battery set 2. This has got a battery set 1 and a battery set 2, but they're both here inside a lithium polymer rechargeable battery. The solenoid is here. You can see that as our gas enters through our fitting, it's going to come up and out through here, with the solenoid valve, of course, opening and closing to let that gas flow or not. We have one fitting that comes from the head, which is a female Fisher connector. That female Fisher connector allows us to connect accessories. If we were connected directly now to the temperature monitor, so on top of the scrubber here, we could just use it like that. With this rebreather, because it's a little bit more upgraded, we've got the CO2 sensor. The CO2 sensor is an optional extra. It connects with Fisher connectors, so we've got one female and one male. In between the scrubber and the electronics. And this detects CO2. So on the end here, we have a hydrophobic membrane, and that's to reduce any moisture entering. If moisture enters the CO2 sensor, it detects it like CO2 and give you false readings, which is not great. It's got a little attachment clip, and here is the face of the sensor. You need to make sure the face of the sensor is kept in really good condition, nice and dry. So I'm going to pop that back into place and pop the CO2 sensor in. Okay. So if you imagine now, this is going to sit on top of the scrubber, and it's going to make sure that this is the area where the gas is going to mix at the top of the scrubber, and then as you inhale, it's going to come up through the centre and out to the diver. Okay, we need to now put all this back together. To put this back together is a little bit of a fiddly operation, so I'm going to need to use 2 hands. First thing is I take this section and I'm going to fit the CO2 sensor onto that post there, and then I'm going to put these down through the middle, allow me to connect them up a little bit later on. And then I need to take my scrubber, and I'm looking for this little aligning pin here. So there's a small, I don't know if you can see it, little aligning pin here, and that aligns with the groove in the base here. So I'm going to make sure that they align together. I need to make sure that I don't trap any cables, so I'm going to pull that completely out of the way, lift it up, pop them into place, and hopefully we should get a nice solid click as it goes into place. So you can see I've got 3 wires. I'm going to look around, make sure that I haven't trapped any of the cell wires, everything's in good condition and not broken or pushed out the way, and then fit my little nut to the top there. Go back a few turns, upside down, go back a few turns, and then just finger tight. No need to over tighten this. All it does is hold it together. There's no CO2 seal or anything. So I've got 2 yellow connectors, and I've got the connector that's coming from the head. There's only one that it'll plug into, so I plug from male to female. Again, they've got little red dots on them, so I line the little red dots. Make sure that they're nice and clean. Got any Fisher oil in them if required. And then with the little caps as well, I need to make sure all of that goes out the way. I don't want any of these caps kind of hanging out here at the side when I put it back in. If I do that, there's a good chance that I'll damage the seal between the electronics unit and the scrubber. So I'm going to push that in there, make sure that everything is underneath, tucked out the way. And so that leaves me now with a single connector. And that single connector is going to connect to the top of the temperature monitor and allow me then to get the information from that temperature monitor into the electronics. That out of the way. That into place. Right, do we have any questions? The optional extras sound like they really add to things, but do they affect the CE rating? No. They're all tested with the machine to be CE certified as well. So any parts that you buy direct from AP are CE certified. If they're not CE certified, there are some things that they sell outside of Europe, then they'll tell you quite openly. But most of the parts that you're going to buy for the rebreather are going to be CE certified with the machine. So you can add things like the CO2 sensor and stuff. So we need to turn the handset on and check the batteries. Nice easy step on this actually is I put the handset towards you. I'm going to turn the machine on by pressing the button for 3 seconds. Hopefully, we go. See that? It'll turn on. As it turns on, it's going to tell me it's in trimix. It's going to give me the name of the previous owner. It'll go to the new owner when we finish this course. You can see it does a cell test from controller 1 and controller 2. It does a buzzer and a solenoid test on controller 1 and controller 2. It's saying the temp stick isn't connected, which we know. And here's our batteries. So we can see we've got 6.3, 6.3 across both controllers on both batteries. So we've got battery 1 is the top set, battery 2 is the bottom set, and controller 1 over the left and controller 1 over the right. And the battery self-test is now passed, which means I can turn the controller off. To turn it off, I press the 2 buttons over this side, and it'll say, are you sure you want to power off? And I'm going to say, yes, I am. And then it's going to say, would you like to power off controller 1, controller 2, or all? And I'm going to turn them all off. Okay. So my batteries are good. That means I'm happy to go diving. So we tick our checklist. Attach the temp stick if fitted. So this one is. So I'm going to take that from there. Again, have a look, make sure it's in good condition. Make sure that that's in good condition. And I'm going to inspect this lid O-ring. If required, just use my wooden little paint sharp and paintbrush again. I can lift the O-ring out and I can clean it. This machine's literally just been serviced, so that's in perfect condition. And then have to connect these two together. Now again, a little bit fiddly because this isn't quite long enough to fit down there and fit together. So you have to learn to do it in a way that you're not going to damage the O-ring or damage any of the cables. So I tend to rest it on the top there. That allows me to have both hands free to be able to connect that into place. So what you can see is I've got the scrubber cable now connected into the electronics and everything's in place. Okay, so connected. Inspect the lid and make sure that it's in good condition. Tighten the cable away, which I'm going to do now. So I'm going to push this and all of its little fittings inside there. Okay, and I'm going to bring it so that this little notch that you can see just here aligns with the loop, the cutout for the exhale part. Just going to push that all inside, making sure again that none of this cable is going to get trapped inside the scrubber as I go. Just lift and pop them into place like that. Align it up with the 3 connectors. So I've got 3 connectors on the top. Align it up, and when I'm ready, I'm just going to put a little bit of pressure on the top. Hi Ross, how you doing? So I'm just going to put a little bit of pressure on the top. Inspect round, just make sure my O-ring's in place. Once it's in place, then I can lift my clips and secure them. So now I've got a fully assembled scrubber and electronic head. So you can see these little clips, they just fall into place. When you're ready to put them on, you lift them and you give them a twist, and then they keep a little bit of tension on there just to make sure that it's not becoming undone, and we've got a nice good seal. So we can tick that. No, we can't, because the next step is to install it into the rebreather. So we need to actually install it. So I'm going to tick my housing. I'm just going to lie this slightly on its front of its countenance, so hopefully you guys can see. Yeah, okay. Open the lid. Hey Roger, how you doing, buddy? Hope it's time for a beer where you are. Okay. We've got some Velcro bands that hold everything in place, one each side for the cylinder and this central one for the scrubber. So what I'm going to do now, lift all the cables, place the scrubber inside the machine. Okay, there's a lot of different orientations, but I'm trying to get it so that this section is right down here on this side, lining the exhale up with a hole in the top of the case for the exhale. Pass my Velcro through, make sure everything's not caught, and then I can just pop that there into place like so. Okay, good. So we've got our scrubber now fitted in. We're now going to fit cylinders, make sure that they go into place. Twist like that. There we go. So next step is the cylinders. Of course, I need to analyse and pressure check my cylinders. That's air. And 210 bars. .1, small and 66 meters. Small calibration error on an analyzer, but I looked at it, but only 0.1%. Then our oxygen the same. And the Oxygen is analysed, perfect. Again, we pressure check it. As previous, try to be as slow turning on the oxygen valves as possible. Just letting the pressure come up very, very slowly. One of the nice things about these AP valves is they're very easy to control. One of the not so nice things is they take a lot of turns to go from fully on to fully off. So if you have the valve fully open and you want to close it in emergency, it takes quite a lot. There's something like 15, 20 turns on it. Let's come up to pressure now. Okay, and in there we have 130 bar. So let's release that pressure. Cylinders are analysed. Make a note on my checklist. Okay. Next step is to fit the diluent and oxygen cylinders to the rebreather. Obviously, we're going to fit our oxygen on our right as worn and our diluent on our left as worn. To do that, we find the easiest way to fit them is to have them standing at 90 degrees to start with. Start to fit the DIN connector. If we make it easy for you guys to see. Sorry. Start to fit the DIN connector. Before you're all the way home, so it doesn't drag on the O-ring, I'm just going to allow it to then roll back into position inside the rebreather. Place that on the top and then adjust, finally tighten the first stage into place. And I'm going to make sure that the handle sticks through the little notch in the case to make sure I can get it. So when I'm happy that I've got my position and orientation right, I'm just going to tighten that little band there. Okay, same thing on the oxygen side. Start at 90 degrees, push them into place. O-rings are in good condition there. Once I've got it in a bit, I'm just going to allow it to roll 90 degrees again. Hopefully it should come down. Just move that. There we go, like that. Into place there. Allow it to come up. That should fit through again. That little hole in the box. And then tighten that. So that now, I've got my scrubber in place and my two cylinders in place and they're both pointing the correct way. Alright, just to catch up with where I should be on the checklist, this should already be fitted by now. It wasn't a part that we removed for the basic build up. So I'm just going to put them into place. You can see it's got a beige section on the top and that aligns with the can so we know which way it goes. Just going to put that on the top there. Just going to put it into place before it gets too difficult. Should really have been on earlier. Okay, so that fits. It's fitted. I need to realign this oxygen cylinder. When I'm happy, just close that. Okay, so cylinders and scrubber in place. I can mark that on my checklist. Fit the oxygen, fit the diluent. Make sure the first stages are secure, which we're going to do now. Oxygen first stage secure, diluent first stage secure. Okay. Next step is to clear the solenoid hose. The solenoid hose has an O-ring on it. I'm going to make sure that the O-ring there is in good condition. If required, I'll put a little bit of oxygen grease on there. I'm going to hold it away from my eyes, briefly open the valve to blow any moisture or water that might be inside this fitting or any dirt, debris out. So I'm going to hold it away from my eyes. Again, nice and slowly, just going to blow any material that shouldn't be in there out there. Once I've done that, I'm going to hold it and connect it to the top of the head fitting. So if I lift it up for you, you'll see here on the top of the head we have the solenoid fitting, and it's basically nice and simple. All I'm going to do is turn that, put it into that position there, and then just tighten it up finger tight. So it's a milled fitting, means it fits in quite easily. There, just to the end. So that's now my solenoid feed fitted. Connect. Open the cylinder valves and verify diluent oxygen pressures. Refill necessary. We've already pressure checked them, so it's not the end of the world. I'm going to just make sure that everything is neat for you. Put that through there. Okay. What we're going to do now is we're going to turn on the rebreather and perform a high pressure leak check. Just going to clean that away, and I'm going to spin the machine round for you so you can see what we're doing. At this point here, all of my high pressure system is fitted, so I can do my leak check. To do that, I'm going to open the cylinder valve slowly. Oxygen, if you can, 2 minutes. Diluent can be a little bit quicker, but why not go slow as well? Okay, when they're open, just confirm SPG's work. So yeah, the oxygen still shows the same right amount, and the diluent also showing the right amount. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn both cylinders off completely. Closing the cylinders is allowing me to perform a high pressure leak check. So all the hoses now are pressurized. If when I turn the cylinders back on again I see a jump in pressure, it means that the pressure has been lost from the system somewhere. So I'm going to wait for around about a minute. I'm just going to tick off that I've closed the cylinder valves, and then I'm going to wait. So as we wait, making sure I don't see any gauge dropping. If I do want to turn it back on, then of course that's a problem. So we'll start with the oxygen side. We can see there, and then as I turn it back on again, I just check. Okay, yeah, there was no jump in that valve, in that needle, sorry, which means we're in good condition. One side, open the oxygen. On the diluent side, same thing. Get the SPG, take a look. As we turn it back on again, great, stays at exactly the same pressure. There's no jump in the needle, so it's passed. The next step is to verify the in-stage pressure is 7.5 bar or higher for the oxygen, and 7.5 bar for the oxygen, not higher, and 9 bar for the diluent. So with our main addition, we can remove it. We can take our in-stage pressure gauge, we turn it on, plug it in, and we're 7.5 on the oxygen side. That's great. On the diluent side, same thing. We're just going to disconnect the diluent, plug in the diluent, and again check that we're 9 to 10 bar, and we're 9.1. So I'm happy with that as well. That means that both my in-stage pressures are fine. If you guys remember from the other week, those that saw, if the oxygen in-stage pressure is too high, because the solenoid acts against the pressure of oxygen, you'll use more battery life if the pressure is too high, number one. And number two, it might mean that the solenoid can't open at all against the oxygen supply. So if the oxygen in-stage pressure is too high, that's a bit of a problem. The diluent, if the diluent in-stage pressure is too high, the ADV would have been set based on the oxygen in-stage pressure. So if the in-stage pressure is too high, it's just like having a free flow of the ADV, so it can push gas through the ADV, which is not what we want. So making sure that the in-stage pressures are correct is really important. If we need to, we can just adjust them with an Allen key on the back of the first stage, which we'll go through if you do a course. So oxygen in-stage pressure is correct, diluent in-stage pressure is correct. Okay. The next step is our mouthpiece. Okay. So this is the mouthpiece that we've got with this rebreather. This one is the DSV, so the dive surface valve. The dive surface valve is only a valve for the rebreather, so it's either in rebreather mode or it's closed, so no water can enter. You can get an open circuit bailout valve, which is a second stage of a regulator built in. You'll feed from the diluent or an off-board gas supply. And in the event of emergency, you just turn the mouthpiece from one position to the next position, and it will mean that you can breathe from an open circuit regulator. When you go back, you're back to the rebreather again. Some people prefer BOVs, but it's a much bigger topic than we've got time for today. We can probably do a little session on BOVs later. But a bailout valve is basically designed to give you some sanity breaths, to get you off your rebreather in a real bad emergency and help you get to a fresh gas source. So they're quite a nice feature if you like the idea. And this machine is CE certified with one, so if you want to fit it, no problem. Now, the DSV on this one, so a little bit like the JJ, runs from inhale from the left, exhale to the right. The SF2, if you remember, was inhale from the right and exhale to the left. So it's the opposite way around to the SF2, but the same way around as the JJ, because of course, as we all know, the JJ is the Inspiration GTI. So, got a little connector here, and this connector is basically knurled and allows you in cold water to feel the position. And it's quite an interesting design. What you do is, rather than actually flicking the lever itself, the lever doesn't move, it's fixed. You actually turn the entire barrel. So if you see, what I'm going to do here is hold on to this black section on the outside, and I'm going to rotate the actual inner barrel. So that means that this stays solid in my mouth, and the barrel itself, so the hoses, will then rotate. Okay. So you can see we're just going to rotate it like that. The fittings themselves, the hoses, they're very soft compared to some of the other rebreathers, which means they're a little bit more flexible, which is a nice thing. Hose weights, again, just to keep the weight of the hose down so that it doesn't float above your head or try and pull on your mouth. We have a blue one indicating our exhale gas. This time on this rebreather, we've got the hood, which you can change sides of with these little clips that allow the hood to be connected and then fitted over onto the hood holder here. You need to make sure that when the mouthpiece is in the rebreather part, that the hood is visible. It's very simple. It just comes off. Squeeze the hose a little bit. You can take it off. And if you wanted to fit this to the other side, you're just going to move it over to the other side and then push it over that and fit it onto that side. So you can put the hood holder on whichever side you want. Depends what your personal preference is. If you've got one eye more strong than the other, or your one eye is your primary, it means that you keep the hood out of the way if necessary and fit it into place. The hoses, you remove these, you pull these two outer covers back. Inside there, they're just cable tied on. Same with this side. Remove this cover back, they're just cable tied on. You undo the cable ties, you can lengthen or shorten this hose as well to make it more suitable for the diver. We need to test the mushroom valves like all the rebreathers. So we've got two mushroom valves, one this side and one this side, that direct the gas flow left to right. Okay, so what you do is the same things we've done previously. I'm going to put the rebreather into the closed circuit mode, so I'm going to twist it towards me, and then I'm going to cover one side. If I cover the exhale side, I shouldn't be able to exhale, but I should be able to inhale. Which is correct. I'm not covering the other side, I'm just listening for any gas passing. I'm going to make the same but in the other way around now. So now I'm going to cover the inhale. So now I should be able to exhale but not inhale. Good. And remember, you don't want to do it too hard. You don't want to suck really tough against the mushroom valves and hold them in place. If they're leaking, it'll be leaking under normal breathing. So keep normal breathing type pressure on them. You can try them harder as well, just to be sure, but don't assume that just because you've done it hard, it'll work when it's soft. Make sure that that works. Once we've confirmed the operation of non-return valves, it now says we're going to fit all the convoluted hoses to the rebreather. So we've got one convoluted hose, which is this one here, which has got a blue fitting on it. I'm going to fit that one onto the top of the head of the rebreather at the base. It's fitted. Okay. In fact, I'll turn around so you can see. Right here. You can see now. So I'm going to fit that. Press it into place. It's got O-rings, two O-rings in there. I keep forgetting because we've just serviced this machine. But what you would do is you check, make sure that those O-rings are in good condition. They've got a little bit of grease on them, and if necessary, you can lift them out. place. Again, only finger tight, no need to over tighten anything. Everything should be able to come undone or do it with your fingers. This one, I'm going to fit just inside here. You just make it a little bit thinner and it'll fit through the hole. So now we've got both sides fitted. I'm actually finished with the back of the rebreather, so what I'm going to go and do is just close it up, pull the tags and make sure that they're out of the way. And that way I'll get around to you guys. So fitting these convoluted hoses, same on this side again. Just inspect them, make sure they're clean, make sure the O-rings are in good condition. Lift up, push fit, and then tighten. Because you're fitting plastic to plastic, I'm always a little bit cautious that we don't cross thread anything. Just make sure we don't cross thread anything. Yeah, that's good. Same thing over here. What you'll notice is one thread on one side is a much thicker thread than the other side. So the thread over here is much thicker than the thread on this side. This is a thin thread, and that means you can't get these the wrong way around. Okay, so there we go, we've connected the front, the back, sorry, and now we're going to connect the front. Same thing, just looking, making sure they're nice and clean, no dirt on the O-ring, no debris, make sure that the loop's nice and clean. In the closed circuit position, I want the mouthpiece facing the sky, a lot like the other rebreathers. And again, same thing. I've got a rough thread on one side. Push it into place, just tighten it slightly. And then on the other side, I've got a much finer thread, and that allows me not to then mix those around, even though they're all right-handed threads. I'll put that into place. If necessary, I can put a little twist on the mouthpiece by twisting, and make sure that the mouthpiece is evenly pointed and there's no stress or tension in any of the hoses. If there's tension in the hoses, you'll find it won't be so comfortable in your mouth. When I'm happy, just nick those to the end, and that's it. Everything's closed. So now the integrity of the loop's built. I'll put everything together. Connect convoluted hoses to T-pieces. Done. Just double check now the operation of the mouthpiece and make sure that we have the flow of gas correct. Okay. It's not impossible to get this the wrong way around. It just means that you will have used a screwdriver to remove this, flip them the other way around and put the hoses on badly. So it's not impossible, but it's very unlikely as long as you don't disassemble the machine too much. So we make sure then our gas flow of our mouthpiece with the arrow is coming in from the left and out towards the right. If we're happy with that, we're good. Right, let's ask a couple of questions. Quite like that Bob swivel, yeah, it's quite nice. The DSV swivel's quite nice. Regarding CE, we've got a couple of questions about CE here. Let me see if I can figure out what we're talking about. AP, so it seems like that one's been answered so far. Do you think the AP hoses are the best? Going back to the SF2 video, I see some people modify SF2 with Cooper hoses. What's your opinion of Cooper hoses? Pros and cons, other than being more expensive? Honestly, the Cooper hoses are really nice. They've got quite a good amount of weight to them, so they feel nice in the water and they look super cool. That's probably the biggest benefit. But if you were to damage one in the field, you probably won't find another one very easily. If the rubber at the end was to start to perish, which I've seen happen on those Cooper hoses, it would be quite difficult to get another one in any time soon. Stick with the manufacturer's specification. We don't know what adding a hose that's not specified by the manufacturer is going to do. The Cooper hoses are smooth bore internally, so that means that they should be a better gas flow because there's no cavitation of the gas happening inside the hose. But it's not proven, and you know we can assume lots of things in the world, and we can assume we know better. But the manufacturers tested this machine with these hoses, and it passes. We might say, okay, well, it's making it better, but that's only in our opinion. Without having the test data, it is just that. It's just an opinion. These hoses are super cheap. If you're to tear one, rip one, it's very easy to get another one. It's very easy to replace one. You'll probably find an inspiration in just about any dive destination. If you're desperate, somebody will lend you a hose, I'm sure. So if it's me, try to stick with the manufacturer's spec as best as possible. Keeps the machine standard. One of the things about changing your machine too much is it means that you might have to modify your skill set. and that means that you're slightly different from your team or slightly different from other divers you might dive with. So again, I try to keep as little modifications as possible. I'm all for, you know, personalising. You can paint this case, you can, you know, generally you can add small, you know, like on my SF2 I've changed the webbing for halcyon webbing, on my JJ, sorry, I've changed the webbing for halcyon webbing rather than JJ webbing, just to make it a little bit personalised so it's mine. Put some stickers on the back, cave shield, that kind of thing. But when you start affecting the loop or the integrity of the rebreather or the high pressure system of the rebreather, you start to change things that weren't as they're designed. So try if you can to keep everything as standard as possible. Right then, so that seems to answer the question so far. Right, we've verified the proper operation, so we can turn that off. The next step is to complete a positive and negative test. Okay, to do that, we're going to need to put our counter lungs, which here, if I just lift some of this stuff out of the way, you can see our counter lungs have a overpressure valve on the inhale side, on the exhale side, and on the inhale side, both sides. And these have got a 2-position place, so we can turn them to 1 and they click, and that's the pre-dive, and then we can turn them to the left and they click, and that's the open or dive position. So we're going to do the pre-dive, so we want to turn them until they click for the pre-dive mode. Being in the pre-dive mode, what it does is it compresses the spring. Compressing the spring means the overpressure valve is much harder to activate. That means that we can get much higher pressure on our positive test. Okay, so we're going to do that. We're going to do a positive test first. What we're going to do is we're going to inhale through our nose and exhale through our mouth, and we're going to blow the counter lung up and blow all of the hoses up, and so everything is completely under pressure, and we're going to look for leaks. So as you can see, look, I can actually blow hard enough to still trigger the overpressure valves if I want. And what we're doing is we're looking at the rebreather, and we're going to see if any of this machine starts to sag. I can see here I've got quite good tension in the counter lungs and nothing's moving. Obviously if the rebreather was to leak slightly, I would see this happening. You see the rebreather sagging, we don't want that. That means that there's a leak somewhere. So again, just blow it back up. Okay, so we take a look, and we're going to leave this for a minute. The minute, basically what we're going to do is expand everything. All the counter lung bags are going to expand away from each other and check for leaks. The hoses and all the O-ring fittings are going to pull apart and make sure that those O-rings are not going to leak under expansion. And we're going to check basically the integrity of the loop. After 1 minute, if we're happy, we should open and we should hear a nice rush of gas. Okay, the machine should settle down. Now we're going to do the negative test. The negative test is going to pull everything together, make sure that under compression that all of the O-rings then move into place, and make sure that we've not got any leaks from any other part of the system. So inhale through my mouth and exhale through my nose this time. So if you saw what I did there was I squeezed the hose with my hand. And squeezing the hose with the hand has deflected the hose and made it compress. What you can see there's compression in the hose there. Now compressing the hose slightly, okay, will mean that I can see if it bounces back or not. Not a little bit like the JJ, the canal machines with the compressed, but this cover that we see on the diaphragm here means that we can't see the diaphragm if it returns back. But I can see the hose. If that dint in that hose now was to return back, it would mean that I've got gas entering the rebreather. Okay. We're going to go and leave this for a minute, just make sure that we still have our negative test on the rebreather. Everything looks in pretty good condition as it should do. Like we say, this machine was literally just serviced. When I'm happy, I can open, I can hear gas flow into the rebreather. The dent that I put into the hose is now returned, and then of course get into a good habit of closing the loop so that nothing enters it while you're not breathing from it. The next step is to verify that my automatic diluent valve works. I can do that by pressing it. It's in the off position, move it to the on position. Now gas enters the rebreather again. Just check, move to the off position. It does definitely stop the gas flow. And then back to the on position. So now I know my automatic diluent valve works. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the machine's on-screen startup process. So unlike the SF2 and the JJ where the calibration and everything need to be done manually, the AP rebreather turns itself on and goes through a set of pre-dive checks for you to make sure, one, that it's functioning, and two, that you're ready to calibrate if required. So I'm just going to put that to one side, lift this up and bring it a little bit closer so you can see. Make sure I put my hood somewhere where I can see it. And here's my electronic handset, hopefully you can all see. So we're going to go through the process. To turn it on, I'm going to press the button for 3 seconds. It's going to turn on. And what we're going to do there is we're going to go for the trimix, tell me it's the trimix screen, lithium polymer, it's going to give me the details, I probably should cover those. The guy who owned it previously, then it's going to do the self checks, 3 self checks. From controller 1 and controller 2, it's checking the solenoid and the buzzer are working. Now you see we've got all the temperature probes plus the CO2 sensor. Now it's going to do a battery test. You can hear it actually adding gas. So what it's doing is it's opening and closing the solenoid to check if there's any huge battery voltage drop when there's power being taken from those batteries. So it's done that, it's checked the batteries and it told me the batteries are fine. So now what it's asked me to do is open the O2 valve, which I'm going to check. The O2 valve is definitely open, and then I confirm it with the middle button, the enter button. Now it's going to ask me to open my diluent. I can reach around. Yeah, my diluent is open, and I can confirm that that's open. Check your bailout. So again, I can go ahead, make sure, as it was from the other day, my bailout is still ready. There's still gas in there, and that's good to go. When I'm happy that I've checked my bailout, I can tell the machine, continue. Now it says open the counter-lung auto pressure relief valves. So these are the counter-lung valves that we spoke about earlier. We closed those for the pre-dive. So now we're going to open them. Click, one on the exhale side, same thing on the inhale side. Turn on, click. And they actually say pre-dive and dive on them. So if you get it wrong, it doesn't really matter. You can see it very easy. And then I say I'm okay. Now it's a test the mushroom valves of the mouthpiece. And we tested the mushroom valves of the mouthpiece, so I'm happy that that's okay. This is my elapsed dive timer, so I can have a bit of a record of how long the machine's been on for if I want. I can reset it now. Because I put a new scrubber in, I would normally say yes. And it would reset my elapsed time to 0 minutes. Now it said, would you like to calibrate the oxygen sensors? In this case, I would. So I'm going to press yes. It's going to tell you that the calibration pressure, we're currently at 1000 millibar. And it can ask you what percentage of oxygen we've got. And we've got 99% oxygen at the moment. So I can say we've got 99% oxygen. Press accept and say open the mouthpiece to closed circuit mode. So I'm going to open the mouthpiece and make sure that it's in closed circuit so that gas can exit the rebreather. Just like the other rebreathers, if I add oxygen here, I get increased amount of oxygen at the cells. Then that's what we want for calibration. But if that oxygen can't escape, I also get increased ambient pressure. Increased ambient pressure and fraction of oxygen means that I get a higher partial pressure, and that will mean that the cells will calibrate incorrectly. So I need to make sure that the gas can flow outside the rebreather. Equally, I don't want to be squeezing these hoses, any pressure on the rebreather line on its front, so the gas can't escape. I want to make sure that the gas is free to move around the rebreather. Okay. When I'm ready, I'm just going to press enter, and you'll hear it flushing. So, as you can see, gas is going to enter the rebreather. As oxygen enters the rebreather, these cell values are going to come up. Okay, and what they're going to do is when they stabilise, they're going to put a little grey box over the top of the cell. And it says that that cell is now stabilised. Okay, the reading that we're getting from that cell is stopped. When it's stopped, it'll say, okay, that's 100% oxygen then. That's all of the oxygen it can get. That's the highest millivolt reading it can get. And then it will reset that value to 1. Or 0.9899 in this instance. So you can see those cells are coming up. When we're looking, the middle cell's lagging a little bit behind the other cells, but it's on its way. And it's not injecting a lot of gas. It takes a lot of time, but it's injected slowly, and it's got to change all of that filling chamber, if you remember, right? So we'll give it a moment. It's going to inject gas. So one cell has come up to 1, the other cells come up to 1, 1.1, and all the cells are now on their way up. And when they reach where they want to be, you'll see that the sensor will just lock it out. So we've got controller 1 along the top, controller 2 along the bottom. Hopefully in a minute we'll start to lock some of these out. Okay, so lock that one out at the bottom there. It's going to lock out the next one in a minute. It's taken a long time to calibrate at the moment because we did a false calibration on it earlier to test the CO2 sensor. So those two are now locked. It's now going to lock the other two. So it's locked those two into position, and then it's going to lock these two. And as you can see, the controllers are reading slightly different PO2 reading even for the same cell. So it's going to come up, try and make it better so you guys can see. Then it's going to say calibrating. You'll hear a beep, and there we go. Look, all cells on both controllers are back to 1. The next step is to calibrate the CO2 sensor. Calibration of the CO2 sensor complete. We've got a nice green icon, and now the machine beep beep. That means the machine started up and ready to go. If you look at the handset, I'll see if I can give you guys a good picture of it. What we can see in the handset is we can see that we're currently on controller 1. So controller 1 is currently controlling the rebreather. That means everything's good. Next to that, we can see the set point. The set point is 0.7. So this machine is trying to hold 0.7. Next to that, you see this little top hat. That can change. That one there means that the set point switch is currently set to manual. To switch from low set point to high set point, I'll press and hold the middle button, and you'll see the set point will jump up there to 1.3. When I'm ready to go back down again, I press and hold again, and we go back down. You also get a beep to know that you've gone back down to low set point. Reason being, you shouldn't really be on low set point in the water. You should always be on the high set point, really. So it'll let you know that you've changed set point. In the middle here, you can see the scrubber monitor, and this is a bar. This bar goes green all the way up, fills up, and then comes all the way back down. So as the scrubber warms up, it'll go green. Then as you start to use the scrubber up, it'll start to go grey and start to work back down again, and leave you with just what's remaining in the scrubber and show you where the active reaction face is. So that there is the scrubber monitor. There'll be more details exactly how it works in the course. At the top, you can see you've got 2 batteries. Okay, this is the batteries that are being read by controller 1. I have the PO2. So cell 1 reading 1, cell 2 reading 1, cell 3 reading 1. Currently my diluent is air, and the pressure that I'm at is 1002 millibar here inside the dive center. And here's my time. When I start to descend in the water, obviously the millibar reading will rise up, and when it reaches a specified value, about 1 meter, it will switch into dive mode. When it's in dive mode, it will start to monitor our dive depth down here and our dive time down there. If I'm to press and hold this button, I can see the readings on controller 2. So I can see that controller 1 and controller 2 are matching. I can see how controller 1 is reading the battery. So if there was an issue where controller 2 was reading the battery differently, I would see in this screen, sorry, it times out after a bit, you can see in this screen the differences. If I keep it pressed, I get the actual cell millivolt reading. So you can see that the way it's reading the cells, if I press and hold it again. Just a minute, somebody at the door. Sorry about that. Joys are running a business. Okay. So press and hold that. You can see I've got cell 1 and controller 1 and controller 2, and then I can see the 3 millivolt readouts of the cells. So if I want to compare millivolt readouts of the cells, that's possible as well. If I long press this button, what I do, you can see when I press the button, I get a little green icon. Okay. If I long press that button, basically I can silence some alarms as well. So that's how the rebreather works. If I go into the menus, I press the 2 outside buttons and I get the menus. I get CCR menu or the decode menu. Inside the CCR menu, I can change my high set point. I can go to change my low set point. I can change my set point switch. So manual means I manually need to change from 0.7 to 1.3. So during my descent, a specified point, again you'll learn in your course, you're going to switch up to the higher set point. The higher set point is going to mean you're going to get more oxygen, less nitrogen, have longer dive times and more efficient decompression. So I'll go back to where we were. Set point. Okay, the other options I have gradual, which is a ramped set point switch. So it means it'll switch set points up gradually as we descend. And then I've got auto set point switch. Okay, if I select the auto set point switch, what will happen is I specify a depth at which I want it to switch from high to low. So if I can say I would like you to auto switch at 21 meters. So every time I reach 21 meters, it will automatically switch from the low set point to the high set point. Some people like the gradual because it means that it adds the gas much more smoothly during your descent, meaning that you end up at the maximum depth on the high set point. Some people like the manual because they've got full control, and some people like the auto because quite often you'll forget about it because you're enjoying your dive, and then you end up on low set point in the bottom phase, which is not great for deco, not great for nitrogen narcosis, and kind of gets you in trouble with the team. So, high set point, low set point switching. I can change the hood intensity. I'll bring the hood up now to show you then. This is our hood. Can you see that there? So we've got a set of green lights. Green, everything's good. Red, bad. Flashing lights mean look at something. You can tell that I've got controller 1 closest to the cable here and controller 2 over here, and everything's in a good state now, so I've got 2 solid green lights. When you're diving around, you should see 2 solid green lights. If you start to see some flashing, it means take a look at the handset. If you start to see some red stuff, it means there's really something wrong. More detail on the course. So inside that menu again, we go through. Hood intensity, that's the brightness of the hood. Backlight, so on the screen I can have always on. I can have on when I press a key, or I can have on dark, so dark's quite light. Obviously if you're cave diving, that's what you want. I can set the brightness of the screen, I can turn it up and down. Again, if I'm diving in a dark environment, I don't want this too bright. I can change the colour theme, which is just a fancy thing for saying I want it in different colours. You can have like this green and yellow, you can have pink, and you can have blue, whatever you want. Then we go back to our elapsed dive timer. If I go, I don't reset. If I go into the menu again, and I go into the deco menu, here I can change my diluent. I can, don't go this way. I can change my gradient factors. I can change my unit of depth from meters to feet. I can put it into demo mode. Demo mode is basically just what it's going to look like while you're actually diving. I can see my oxygen exposure. If I go into there, I can see my CNS and my OTUs, how much oxygen I'm building up during the dive. I can change the clock. I can go into the logbook, and then I can exit menu. Okay, so that's our handset. So now the machine's calibrated. I'm just going to clip that on there, out of the way. I need to tick it off on my checklist that we're calibrated. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to route the hood, and I'm going to route the buzzer. So in this instance, the hood comes down here. I have it go through here, under there. Be careful with this, obviously it's a glass fibre, you don't want to tighten too many knots. So I'm just going to go here, 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 and then just clip up onto there. Any spare, I can just push back inside the box, out of the way. Make sure that my handset is routed where I want it to route. Great. And then my buzzer, I'm going to put my buzzer and route it there. So it's next to my ear, nice and loud. You can get a piece of Velcro and stuff to hold it in place. You can put it in different places, but you want it somewhere where you can hear it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to flush the rebreather with diluent to make sure that I can hear the buzzer and make sure that the low O2 alarm works. So you can see at the moment we've got 0.99. I'm going to add some diluent. You'll see it come down slowly, just a minute. There we go, down it comes. And there's our low oxygen alert, and you can hear the beeping, and then you can hear the solenoid inject in, and you see the PO2 values come back up again to back low set point, which is 0.7. Okay, so the machine did exactly what it should do. Right? I added out diluent. The PO2 value kept dropped and dropped and dropped. The machine started to add oxygen. As soon as the PO2 value got too low, we got our alarm, we got our audible alarm, we got our flashing red alarm on our handset, and our hood also flashed red. Then the machine injected oxygen again, brought it back up, and now we're stable back on set point. So yeah, that worked. Verify now that the gas cylinder pressures and batteries are appropriate for the dive. Because we've been doing stuff, obviously we've used some oxygen, we've used some diluent. Just make sure everything's ready to go for your dive. And then you can run through, we've done our build-up, we can run through our pre-breathe sequence to make sure that machine's actually ready to get in the water, put it on our back. Okay, that is this build-up process of the AP. What I want to do for you guys, I want to show you something. I want to just test this CO2 sensor, just so you guys can see how accurate it is. So what I'm going to do to test it, I'm going to remove this here breathing hose. This is our inhale breathing hose. Okay, and I'm going to exhale into it. Okay, so I'm going to exhale, breathe in some CO2 down this tube, and eventually it's going to reach that scrubber in the head. So if you watch the handset, so first we've got the oxygen alert, and there we go, we've got CO2 alarm as well. So we've got a CO2 alarm and a low oxygen alarm, both from just breathe in a small amount of CO2 into the exhale side of the rebreather. Look up again so you can see. The nice thing about this rebreather is that CO2 sensor is super sensitive. Even a little bit of CO2 will make it trigger. You can get false positives from CO2 readers. They're not very great when they're in a very moist environment, and they're also not used by a lot of manufacturers. And I believe the reason for that is the stability. Being able to guarantee that they work every single time. The minute you think you can't rely on it, then it's as good as not having it in the rebreather at all. So you need to have real good confidence. I can tell you that John, who's watching this video, has got a CO2 sensor, very happy with it, very confident in its use. But I can also point to 3 or 4 other people that are watching the video that will tell you that they are not confident with its operation and they don't think it's as effective as it should be. The one thing that kind of I think about the CO2 sensor is the CO2 sensor only tells you that CO2 is present, which is a little bit late. You want to know that the CO2 is going to come, and how long you've got left to deal with it. You don't want to know by the time the CO2 is building up. That would be nice to have, but it's something we don't have right now. Best thing to avoid CO2 though: pack your scrubber correctly, don't exceed its manufacturer's duration, and make sure that all of your O-rings and all of your spacer and components are in place properly. And you shouldn't have too much problem with CO2. Working hard and having bad mushroom valves are another thing that can cause CO2, so make sure that everything's in good condition. Provided you do that, you don't really need to worry so much about CO2. Okay, we've now built up the rebreather. It's technically ready to go diving. We're going to run through a few of the questions that people have had, see if I can answer some of those as we go along. Okay. Go simulator. What do you think of the right? Let's stop this thing beeping for a second. Upset with. So there's my CO2 alert still going off, you see. So it still believes it's CO2 inside the rebreather. I'm just going to mute that alarm for a minute. You'll notice it'll start again in a minute's time. What do you think is the reliability of the AP handset controllers in general, sticking buttons, resetting during dives? So yeah, there's a lot of stories on the internet of when the 2020 first came out, with the cables flooding, the handsets flooding. Remember, on the AP, this is the only way of accessing the PO2 values from controller 1 and controller 2. So if you're to lose this handset by severing the cable, it flooding or not working, then you lose access to what the PO2 is. The hood will tell you if the PO2 is inside an acceptable range or not, but it doesn't tell you exactly what it is. So for manual running stuff, makes it a little bit more difficult. So by only having one handset, you are a little bit constrained to what you can do with it. You can fit another cell holder with an external computer that you plug in, but again, that invalidates the CE, so I wouldn't bother doing that if you can. So CO2 alert still. I'm just going to turn this off so it doesn't alarm at me. In general, the AP handsets are pretty bomb-proof. The old classic handsets were a little bit prone for the lights going, the backlights, but this mono handset is pretty good. The problem I find with the mono handset, this hose is very thick, means it's not very comfortable on your arm, and you can get it caught on stuff very, very easily. The handset itself is very robust and solid, but these are piezo buttons, so they're sensitive, and they do go from time to time. Generally, you'll send your machine in for a service, and one of these buttons will be on its way out. It's a bit of a shame, which is why in the new machine they went to the actual push buttons. Okay, it seems like these buttons seem to be much more durable. I've not really heard of too many people having problems with the buttons on this one. I did obviously hear the problems with the flooding and bits and pieces, but the ones that I've had have all been pretty good. What else have we got? Do we do servicing? Yeah, we do servicing, but not on the head. We can do the rest of the rebreather. The gradual set point move is nice. Gradual set point on the JJ. Well, you can do it manually as well, Greg. So, you know, during the descent, if you slowly bring up the oxygen value during the descent, you're going to reach the bottom phase, so it's not the end of the world. What are the service intervals of the AP? We answered that one somewhere. Service intervals of the AP is you want to make sure your first aid is serviced every year. Make sure the rest of the rebreather is serviced every year as well. Not many rebreathers have a CO2 sensing circuit. How reliable are they? How does it physically work? So actually, most CO2 sensors use infrared light. They shine infrared light at a mirror, and then they detect what light comes back. If they detect the particle size of CO2, then they alarm. If the mirror, if you can imagine there's a mirror in there to bounce the light off, if that mirror gets covered in condensation, it means it doesn't work so accurately, and also the molecule size of moisture is kind of the same as CO2, so sometimes you get false readings, which is why we have that hydrophobic membrane right on the front face of the CO2 sensor to make sure that no moisture can enter the sensing circuit. You need to change that on a regular basis and make sure that you air dry them and get them really dry before you put them back, otherwise you can get a lot of false positives. Personally, I not had the greatest experience with CO2 sensors generally. I used to have one in my Sentinel that was a bit of a pain, would always kind of go off, and to so much point that first thing I do when I turn my rebreather on was turn the CO2 sensor off. I believe they're a lot better now as well. The AP ones, there's less on the market, they're quite an expensive device, so there's a bit less on the market, so then we've got a bit less people to tell you about, because I don't personally have it. I like to keep things a little bit more simple. But like I say, John is one of our instructors, he's on the forum there, he's very happy with his and very confident with it. So there's no reason why, if your machine's designed for it and you think it fits your rationale, that you shouldn't have it and shouldn't assume it's going to be reliable. Out of the water, which is the heaviest of all the rebreathers we've shown so far. The heaviest of all the rebreathers we've shown so far is the JJ. Fully kitted, ready to dive, the JJ is around about 2 kilos heavier than this ready to dive, but this I'll need more lead. So total, with all of my lead and everything on, the Inspiration is probably going to be the heaviest, the Inspiration XPD. But if I go to, if you look at the size of the Evo, much smaller, much lighter. And if I go to the unit that John's got, which is the EVP is really down to 24 kilos, so lighter again. Average service cost comparisons. Okay, so the biggest cost during the service is cells. So what we know, when your cells reach their manufacturing time, that you need to make sure that they're changed. So you're going to have 3 cells. Depending on the machine, they're around about 60 to 70 pounds per cell. So you're going to have 3 of those inside the rebreather. Then you've got 2 first aid services, so it doesn't really matter whether you've got an AP or an Apex first aid or whatever. Service is a service, it's going to cost you roughly the same price to have the first aid services. And then you've got a bunch of O-rings that are built into the breathing loop and the canister, the cat-lung set and all of that. So as an ongoing service yearly, you'll find that they're not far off the same price, whichever machine you get serviced. Some manufacturers are a little bit more expensive than others for the parts, but again, we're only talking about buying things like O-rings. So it's not a huge cost to the parts. The time is in the labour, and the labour is relatively similar across all rebreathers. The nice thing about the services is you kind of just do like interim services until around the 5-year mark. At the 5-year mark, you're going to have a much more major service, things like changing the counter-lung bags, maybe changing some of the hard parts on the rebreather that have worn. So then it can start to add up. But with the AP, as you can see, they're not very expensive made parts. Most of them are formed plastic, so they're a little bit cheaper than something like the JJ parts, which are all handmade and made out of solid Delrin, but they're a lot less likely then to fail in the same instance. With the SF2, we've got a lot of carbon fibre and exotic materials on there. The carbon fibre parts are, again, a little bit more expensive than the same part made out of plastic, but again, much more durable, so you shouldn't need to change it as often. EVP is best for travel. EVP or EVO depends what you want in terms of your dive time. So we've got a 2-hour scrubber in the EVO, and the EVP we've got the 3-hour scrubber. So it just depends on what you want to do. Generally, the 2-hour scrubber isn't great for really deep diving, 100 meter or 100 meter plus. So not great. The machine itself, one of the things that AP like to tell us, is tested to 160 meters. So the machine is tested to 160 meters by the military. Although the CE rating for recreational scuba for normal diving like us is still at 100 meters, it is tested to 160 meters, all the components and stuff. A scrubber like this, if you guys, is another cool thing, was built into the James Cameron deep submarine that he used to go to Mariana Trench. So it kind of shows that AP are really a leader in the field of rebreathers and scrubbers. Right, let's just contrast some of the main differences now, because we spoke about 3 rebreathers so far. We've got the JJ. The JJ is designed to be super simple, very streamlined, but it's based on this inspiration. You can see when they put the JJ next to the inspiration, they're very similar. Count-along sizes, the count are similar. The count-along shape's similar. You've got the mouths coming over the shoulders with the 2 mouth buttons, which are disconnectable with low pressure inflator fittings. You've got a loop hoses, and the direction is left to right. A scrubber, which fits in the bottom with a spring base that fits inside the can, that kind of stuff. So very similar in terms of design, where you'll notice that the JJ is much more streamlined. If you were to look at the front of the JJ, and I'll put you one next door for comparison. Let's put JJ in front of it. You can see the JJ is a little bit more streamlined. The inspiration, a little bit more going off. Inspiration can be customised in terms of its hose length that the JJ can't. If we compare again, if you compare with the SF2, The SF2, no count-along. Count-along is built into the tube at the base. If you remember, if I remove the loop, you've pretty much just got a backplate and harness with a couple of mavs on there. So even cleaner at the front. Loop direction on the SF2 is the opposite direction to the AP and the JJ. SF2 made a carbon fibre head in the top. Okay. SF2, when gas is added, oxygen is added, it's added before the scrubber, whereas the AP and the JJ, the gas is added after the scrubber. Okay. The AP, lots more options. Sorry, if you buy an AP, you can add things like an open circuit bailout valve, you add things like the ADV, the CO2 sensor, the temp stick, temperature monitor. You can get a HUD, or at least it's called a HUS, which is a head-up screen, and it means the same thing you see on the handset, you get to see directly in front of your face as your backup. You'd have that in place of the HUD. Okay guys, so I think that's all the questions for today. Thank you for popping along to this session. We're going to run another session, same time next Saturday, 11 AM. And next time we're going to be talking about the Poseidon rebreather, so the Poseidon Mark 6 and 7. The week after that we plan to do the Revo rebreather, and then we have the Horizon the week after that. So moving through, you're going to again be able to see these rebreathers, see the build-up process, see what goes into them, ask as many questions as you like. Oh, sorry, what was that there? What sort of diving is the AP most suited for? What's it definitely not recommended for? There's nothing that this rebreather does that any other rebreathers can't, and the same thing, there's nothing any other rebreathers do who can't do that this can't. If you're going to do extreme depth, then you can't take the AP. So the deepest dives in the world are kind of like 280, 290 meters. You wouldn't be able to do that with a standard AP. Things like the buzzer and stuff would implode. They've got crush depths, whereas a lot of the stuff on the JJ is not designed for, but will take a lot more pressure. So there's nothing you shouldn't do. One of the things a lot of people do when they get their rebreathers, they remove this case to make the rebreather a little bit streamlined, a little less bulky, and a little bit less like having a lunchbox on your back, I guess you want to call it. That's a personal thing. The case is designed to be nice and cheap, so if you do drop it, it just smashes the case and none of your internals get damaged. So it's a protection more than anything else. So if you imagine, we've got a lot of components inside, that if I was to drop this kind of scrubber would smash, the head would smash. So I'm protecting all of this using this case. So if you want to put it inside a frame or inside another type of box, you're more than welcome to. A lot of people put them inside frames that make them look a lot like a JJ actually. What are the common mistakes Shortcut make with this specific unit? So common mistakes, like we said earlier, forgetting to install the O-ring, forgetting to install the spacer, making sure that they go through the calibration properly process and making sure the mouthpiece is open during that. They're all problems that we generally see on this rebreather. With the machine itself having its built-in on-screen checklist, some of the mistakes that are made on the other rebreathers are not made on this rebreather because it does prompt you to actually press a button. But you can also get into this habit of where I see a lot of people just yes, wanting to get to the screen they want to get to. So plus and minus for having an on-screen checklist. Okay, I think that's it, guys. So thank you very much. I enjoyed the time with you. Join us for our next presentation. Any more questions, keep commenting. For the next kind of hour or so, I'll be answering your questions as well. Thank you very much for your time today, and we'll see you next week.